Hello all you fine folks out there, and welcome to the True Crime Grapple podcast. I'm your grizzled host Dan, and thanks for welcoming us back into your ears for another dose of true crime. Before today's story, which is by the way part one of a two-parter, we have to go through a couple of important things. Our show has now launched a Patreon page. Now, what is Patreon? Well, it's a website where you, our loyal listeners, can pledge a small amount each month to help cover our show costs. In doing so, you'll be afforded perks exclusive to Patreon supporters. Just head on over to www.patreon.com/truecrimegrapple. That's Patreon spelt patreon.com/truecrimegrapple, and from just $1 a month, you can be part of helping your show become better. I bet that if you were to look down the side of your couch, you could find $1 or $2, so why not throw it our way? Honestly, any pledge would be most welcome, and if you pledge enough, you unlock some up and coming bonus shows. Quite nice. If parting with your hard earned cash is something you just can't do right now, and I totally get it, you can still contribute. Tell your friends and your family about the show, have them subscribe to the show, and help us grow that way. Don't forget our socials: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that jazz, all that good stuff. Get involved and help put the show on the map. We can't do it without you. Information for all I've just mentioned will be in the show notes and on our social media handles. Okay, right, that's it. That's the housekeeping done. Now, because unfortunately this story is an unsolved cold case, we have important information. Firstly, most of the information for this case is coming to you from the Gone Cold podcast, which focuses on cold cases from Texas. The Gone Cold team has done an excellent job bringing Carla Walker's story back into the public eye with multiple episodes of meticulous research and in-depth interviews with family, friends and others involved in the case. So be sure to go and check out the Gone Cold podcast and listen to this case covered in much more detail, and to hear about other unsolved murders and disappearances that have occurred in Texas. Finally, if you have any information regarding the abduction and murder of Carla Walker, contact the Fort Worth Police Cold Case Department at 817-392-4307. That's 817-392-4307. Show today was written by Lauren Daryani, narrated by me, Dan Kelton, and sound editing by BaBabeats. It's time for your dose, so lock your door, sit back and try to relax, because it's true crime time.
For more than 4 decades, her murder has haunted a teenager abducted after a dance. Her body found days later.
The vast state of Texas can be a lot for anyone to take in. Covering over 250,000 square miles and ranking as America's second largest state, Texas runs a gamut of geographical features. These roughly characterize a total of 7 regions, a system of categories partially drummed up as an attempt to break the state up into more manageable chunks. From desert to thick pine forests, from snow-topped mountains to expansive coastlines, the history and the communities of Texas are as varied as the land that nurtured them. Among these regions are the more centrally located rolling hills, prairies dotted with wildflowers and glimmering lakes. It's within this prairies and lakes region of north central Texas that you'll find the city of Fort Worth. With a population of nearly 900,000, Fort Worth is the county seat of Tarrant County, one of the 13 counties that comprise the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, a sprawling metropolitan area ranking as the largest in the South. While sometimes overshadowed by its larger, more polished neighbour to the east, Fort Worth has a rich history whose identity is linked with the Old West. In 1849, Fort Worth was set up as an army trading post and was one of 8 forts built in order to protect Texas settlers from attacks by Native Americans. Fort Worth has collected many nicknames over the years, but probably the most well known is Cowtown due to its prominent place in the cattle ranching industry, especially during the cattle drives of the post-Civil War era. The Chisholm Trail, which passed through Fort Worth, was created in the mid-19th century as a way to move cattle northward from the Texas trading post to Kansas City where they'd fetch a higher price. Fort Worth is no stranger to vice in its history. The Chisholm Trail and the Texas Pacific Railway both aided in establishing a rest stop for cowboys on the trail. In the 1870s, the rest stop developed into a red light district called Hell's Half Acre, which also incorporated saloons, gambling houses, and dance halls. This Fort Worth precinct would alternatively be called Bloody Third Ward due to the rampant lawlessness and violence. Since the 1950s, the Fort Worth Police Department's cold case unit has filled up with over 900 files, most of which are murder mysteries. One would be right to assume that the significant contributor to this number was the tumultuous decade of the 1970s. Amid a severe recession that brought high unemployment and inflation, political scandal in the White House, a war whose popular support was rapidly waning, and a rise of crime and drug use, the future was looking more than dismal. Slowly, the moral fabric of American society seemed to dissolve as murder and violent crime soared, particularly by the middle of the decade. Youthful pastimes such as hitchhiking and staying out late with friends were regarded with much more caution, and front doors were locked regularly. Just to the west of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex was Benbrook, one of the many middle-class suburbs that seemed to be beyond the reach of this type of predatory danger. With less than 10,000 residents, Benbrook had a quaint charm. Strangers were as good as neighbours, and children grew up in the safety of loving families. Teens attended Western Hills High School, the typical kind of small-town American institution whose sports teams could single-handedly shape the pride of the community. Bordering Benbrook's southern boundary is Benbrook Lake. Not really a lake at all, but a man-made reservoir nearly 6 square miles in area. It was built by the US Army Corps of Engineers for the purposes of curbing flooding of the Clear Fork branch of the Trinity River, which starts in North Texas and ends at the Trinity Bay in the Gulf of Mexico. Since its opening in the 1950s, it has seen tens of thousands of visitors, both local and distant, who come to enjoy boating, fishing, picnicking, sightseeing, and other outdoor activities. By the 1970s, Benbrook Lake was a popular hangout for the youth of the communities. Teenagers from various high schools would get together there for parties and other events. It was a way to pass the time and create moments, both rebellious and innocent, that would be fondly remembered far into adulthood. However, by the end of February 1974, Benbrook Lake would enter people's memories for a much more tragic reason. Found along a lakeside road 3.5 days after her abduction and disappearance, the body of a beloved high school student was discovered.
For more than 4 decades, her murder has haunted Fort Worth. A teenager abducted after a dance. Her body found days later. That case has run cold for years, but her family has not stopped looking for answers.
1974, February, Benbrook Lake. In a shallow drainage culvert near the water, Carla Walker's body is finally found. The person who dumped it never has been.
I'm not gonna go away. All those footsteps in the dark, we're still coming, still looking.
Every year, this week for 44 years,
Somebody captured that moment.
the Walker family tries to remember the smiling teen from the photos instead of the kidnapping, rape, and murder that took her life.
You know, I was 12, Carla was 17. The world lost something precious.
It was outside of a one-time bowling alley on Benbrook Highway where the hours after Valentine's week dance turned for the worse.
He opened the door and she was falling out, and I went to grab her, and he started beating me over the head back here with a pistol.
Rodney McCoy, Carla's boyfriend, was left knocked out. She vanished.
Said and done in just a matter of seconds.
He was a high school football player. She, a pep squad member.
And as one officer put it, we're looking everywhere.
A WFAA report from the days after showed her photo, but investigators had little else to circulate until the body was found a few days later.
For me, there will never be any closure.
Rodney's not a suspect in the case, one that has admittedly turned very cold. One man did confess, but then recanted, the charges eventually being dropped. That was 40 years
I
ago.
remember that like it was 5 minutes ago.
Jim says DNA testing since hasn't produced many leads, not what they hoped.
Promise I made my mom.
But the family won't quit.
We'll never give up.
Not even for a second.
Carla Jan Walker was born on the 31st of January 1947, the fifth of 6 children born to Leighton, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force, and Charlene, who was the manager in a boutique. Carla had 2 older brothers, Steve and Tommy, 1 older sister, Cindy, and a younger brother, Jim. She grew up as part of this tight-knit family in the friendly suburb of Benbrook, just outside Fort Worth. Carla was a 17-year-old junior attending Western Hills High School. With her long, blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes, she was described as the all-American girl by those who knew her. Standing at just 4 feet 11 inches and weighing 105 pounds, Carla's petite stature was deceiving. She was endearingly called Little Spitfire by the family due to her feisty and stubborn nature. While never being considered a bad child, her brother Jim recalls the precocious and defiant attitude that would sometimes bring Carla toe-to-toe for father, who despite this, would always call her his little flower. Still, despite her larger-than-life personality, Carla was well liked by everyone,